Hey everybody, thanks for coming back to the Idea Booth channel. Today we're going to be talking about what the difference is between an account and a project manager. Now in the past, these two roles have been overlapping, and sometimes there's only been an account manager or a project manager at an agency, and if you don't have clear definitions about what each role is going to do, that could cause problems throughout the project. So today we're going to be talking about this hot topic, and we're going to discuss at first what the difference is between an account and project manager, and then we're actually going to go into the specific tasks and discuss who owns what. So let's do that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the account manager. So real quick, what is the account manager? The account manager is client facing. They are the ones who nurture the client relationship. That's their main focus. And they discuss long-term planning with the client and discuss strategy that they then communicate back to the project manager and the team to execute. So strategy, if I can spell it there. So that's kind of their main goal and purpose. Now the project manager is more internally focused. So they're working with the team on a day-to-day basis, and they are responsible for an on-time and on-budget project delivery. So those are the most important things for a project manager. Now, there's definitely some overlap there because they're both going to be communicating with the same teams, whether that's the client or the internal team. So what we want to discuss today is kind of how you're going to break up those two roles. So let's just jump right into the tasks. So the first one is just the initial sales discussion. A client wants a new website, a new design, they want a new article written, whatever it is, the first person they're going to go to is the account manager. Again, client facing. First one. So we're going to put that check mark there for the account manager. Next thing that happens in a project is the account manager does the sales discussion with the client. They come in, they talk to the team, and what happens, the team and the project manager have to scope the project. So scoping the project, that comes over to the project manager. Understanding how long it's going to take, what it's going to cost, goes into also our third point task here, which is the timeline. That's also a project manager task. So these two tasks kind of go hand in hand, but they're different. The important thing is that the project manager will work with the entire internal team to understand what the timeline is, and from the timeline get the scope, because the timeline is going to help influence it by understanding what all the tasks that are going to be involved, which team members are going to need to be involved, and how much it's going to cost to include all of them. So when you have those two things, you obviously have the third thing that comes in line is the budget. And throughout the entire project, because the project manager sets the budget, throughout the project they're responsible for meeting that budget, meaning they have to track teams' hours, how much time are they spending, not only for individual team members, but the team as a whole. So that one again goes under the project manager to-do list and ownership. Then there's internal team management. So what does this mean? Internal team management is the day-to-day management of tasks and team, scheduling internal meetings, scheduling internal review sessions. This is something that has to happen to make sure that the team knows what's going on, what the status is of the project, that they can provide updates, communicate to the larger team if they need specific deliverables in order to complete tasks. This is the responsibility, again, you guessed it, of the project manager. They're the ones who are going to manage the internal team, schedule the internal meetings, and communicate to the larger team about what needs to happen and make sure that the wheels are moving so they can hit that on time and on budget deadline. So you have internal team management. You also have external team management. So external team management refers to the client. You know, in all projects, you're going to need to manage the client as well. Maybe the client has to review deliverables for you. Maybe they have to provide you with some assets like imagery or copy. Maybe they just need to be provided a status update on a weekly status call. This is where it starts to get a little gray between, is it a project manager task or an account manager task? Specifically because we know that the account manager is more so client facing. So for this, we're going to put in check marks in both the project manager and account manager sections. Now, let's just stick on this for a second and talk about it. This is where, depending on your agency, it's going to vary who's going to own this. If it's a bigger agency and projects have both an account manager and a project manager on the project, it is their responsibility to talk at the onset of the project and understand who's going to be responsible for managing the external teams / the client. Will it be the account manager who's messaging the client, scheduling the weekly status calls? Will it be the account manager who's also communicating the status sheet and updates during those calls? It just depends. What's important here though is that these two roles are speaking with each other at the onset of the project and deciding who's going to lead it. Then once the project starts and it's decided on, that person can take that for the duration of the project. It's also really good to make sure that if they're having good communication, that if maybe for a week the project manager is out and the account manager then can take the status calls for them and communicate all the status updates. These for managing the external team, these two roles should really be in sync and communicating with each other. So then when it comes to the project status, this is again the project manager's role. This kind of plays into with this task right here, where it's internal management, understanding who all is responsible for what tasks, keeping the status sheets updated, keeping the due dates updated, and again making sure that people have what they need, know when it's due, and are able to complete it, and they're staying on task. So project status, definitely a project manager role. And then you're going to have internal executive communication. So what does that mean? Internal executive communication. Especially at larger agencies, for big projects, you will have the account and the project managers running the project with their task teams, but in addition to that, there are people inside the agency, the vice presidents, the presidents, the CEOs that have a stake in these projects because maybe they brought in the client or the salespeople. This is the account manager's role to keep them updated as they are needed on this project. What you'll tend to see in agencies is if a project has a lot of touch points, those people who are very high up in the agency will start coming down and speaking not only with the project manager, but also with the team just to check in how things are going. But ultimately, the responsibility for that is for the account manager. Again, they're the ones who are more high-level strategy, and the same way they talk about long-term planning and strategy with their clients, they do that with the internal executive communication team. So the CEOs, the VPs, and the presidents. So the last one here is upselling after a project is complete or during the ongoing phase of the project. Again, that falls over to the account manager role. We touched on that slightly here. While now this might come from anything that the project manager or the team informs the account manager of, but ultimately it will be their responsibility to communicate that upsell or potential new project to the client. It will fall under the account manager. So as you can see, this is a good breakdown of what the project manager versus the account manager is responsible for and where they can overlap. Ultimately, a good project manager will be able to do everything that the account manager does. Not always the case, vice versa. When it comes to scoping, timeline, and budget, that's a very project manager heavy task, whereas part of the sales is going to be scoping, timeline, and budget. Internal communication, the project manager really should be able to do these things as well, but that's kind of where the account manager comes in to help. So if you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them, and make sure you subscribe and like this video and follow for more.